Well, welcome back to the front page here on Radio Free 102.3 FM, KJLH. I am Dara Starr Tucker, and we are here with none other than Judge Hatchett this morning. Welcome to the front page. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and a lot of folks they know your name, and you've had a show that has been airing since, well, you had a show that did air starting in the early 2000s, and now you're back with a show called The Verdict. Can you explain to us kind of the trajectory of your career? First of all, how did you even get started? You're an attorney by trade, but then how did you get started in the world of television? And just kind of explain to us how that journey has been for you.
Well, I'll tell you, Dara, I never expected to do this. And to look back 25 years, I've been doing this on the air as Judge Hatchett. But my career started, let me even go back a little bit further than that. I went to law school never expecting to be a lawyer. I went to law school expecting to expand my options. And if I had my choice of what I was going to do, I was going to run a global foundation and give a lot of rich people's money to things I believed in.
Mm,
Got to law school, bit by the litigation bug, and I was blessed. I mean, it's the only way to explain it to you. I was blessed to have a clerkship in federal court with the first Black federal judge anywhere in the Deep South.
wow.
And it was an amazing experience. And some other time, I'd love to be able to share that story with you.
Mhm.
But what happened is that then leveraged a position after that clerkship to then go to Delta Airlines. So I was an attorney, in-house counsel for Delta Airlines.
Mhm.
And they had never had a Black woman. I was, unlike a lot of companies, we actually litigated the cases ourselves and had outside counsel. So I was litigating cases all over the country. I had planned never to leave until I retired. I thought that I would be there. I got in a couple of promotions as a senior attorney and was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and was comfortable. And frankly, my ego got involved because I never lost a case and I'm like rocking hard here. And the woman who was the juvenile court judge died. And I'll make this a short story, who I had known as a child. And she was amazing. She had been a civil rights attorney before she became the judge, and she died. And before she died, she called me and said, Glenda, what would it take to get you to leave Delta? And I'm like, oh, no, Judge, I'm going to be here. I've got this plan. And after she passed, some people came to me and said, we really want you to apply to be her successor.
Mm.
There, I was like, oh, girl, no, mm-mm.
Mm.
Oh, absolutely not. Right. Because I had young children, I thought I was set. I thought that this is what I would do for the rest of my career professionally.
Mm.
And my father said, and again, I'm gonna make this really quick. My father said, Glenda, because he sat in the meeting, one of my mentors came and said, I really want to talk to you. Let's talk about it. And I was polite. I was like, yes, thank you. I'm really honored that you all would think that for me, girl, but I was not leaving my job. Let's be real clear. Because I could fly, I had these wonderful benefits. I saw myself as an executive eventually with the company. Again, I was the highest ranking woman of any color
Mm.
worldwide. Worldwide. I
Mm.
mean, not just Black women, I'm Hispanic, Native American, any color worldwide. I was the highest ranking in the company. So fast forward, my father said, Glenda, don't decide until you pray. He didn't say what I should do. He just said, don't do it until you pray about it. I was doing that yo-yo prayer. God, what you want me to do? Oh, Lord, you know that. You know how much money I'm making. I mean, I did right, right. But what I learned is that sometimes if you turn it over, not just sometimes, if you turn it over to God, you may not be able to pull it back.
Mm.
And so it was really not my decision. Can't quite explain that in a way, but it wasn't. And I applied the last day the applications were due. There were 63 people who wanted this job, and I was appointed to the bench. So people came to me for a TV show. I'm like, oh, I'm a real judge. I don't want to do that. And so I did leave the bench to go back into corporate America because I needed to send my children to college. And it was when that took that time off that year that Sony came to me and made me an offer. And I said, I have to develop it the way I want to run. So my show is very different, as you know, interventions and trying to get people's lives changed in a way that I was very proud of.
Hmm.
And so you had asked me, one, whether I'd be a lawyer, I would have said, no, I didn't think I was going to be a lawyer. If I ever thought I was going to be a judge, would that ever be on television? It's been interesting how my life has taken these various turns. And I tell young people, you really do have to be open to the possibilities. You do. And so I've been enormously blessed. That's the only way I can summarize it for you. I've been enormously blessed. So what I did in my own courtroom in Atlanta for years was one of the largest juvenile court systems anywhere in the country. I got my recidivism rate down to single digits, which is unheard of in an urban setting, with innovations and doing things differently because I wanted kids not to be in the system. I wanted them to get on with their lives and to be productive. And I took that same kind of approach to television. And
Hmm.
so you saw the interventions, you saw me really. So my whole goal was for people to leave in better shape than they came in.
Hmm. Now, did you,
Probably
the thing
longer
that,
than you wanted.
yeah, no, 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 that was great. The thing that I would notice when watching you, and of course, we all kind of grew up watching you on
Yeah,
television. The thing I would notice that differed with how you operated versus how a lot of other judges did at the time, because there were a lot of judge shows at that time,
right,
um,
right.
is that you almost it's like you led with kind of a feminine energy, and you kind of weren't afraid to lean into that. Did you ever get concerned that people would take that softness or that gentle nature that you had with people, that they would take that for you being maybe a pushover or
Yeah.
someone who was not necessarily suited to a career in law and making difficult decisions as judges have to do? Did you ever wrestle with that, or did you ever feel that you would be harshly judged for leading with your femininity in that way?
You know, it's very interesting. I have done thousands of interviews over these 25 years. No one has ever asked me that question. I love this question. So I'm glad to answer this question.
Well, I'm just nosy.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think this, I mean, I just love this question because I've never been able to address it in an
Mm,
interview. So I'm grateful for the question. And so the simple answer is no, I really took the position that I had to be authentically me. Did
hmm.
I get a lot of pushback in my court in Atlanta before television? Yes. They were like, oh, this new judge, she's down there coddling these children and she, yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
my record said differently.
Yeah.
That because these children were not coming back, because they were going on, that I had the record to show that. And so people were like, well, you come off the bench and you're hugging on people and you're, da da da. Well, that is authentically who I am. And I did not change it to do this work. I
Hmm.
brought my authentic self to this work. Yes, I got criticism. Did I give a damn? No, I did not,
Mm.
because I believed in what I was doing. So I thank you for that question. Yeah, people
Absolutely.
really were like, what is she doing? And why, like, who is she?
Yeah.
And of course, I got a lot of criticism because I didn't come up through the traditional ranks to be a judge. I've
Hmm.
been a corporate lawyer, right? There have been people, I tell you, the 63 people who were applying, they were being, former district attorneys and public defenders or criminal defense lawyers, or they were very different from what I brought.
Hmm.
But I grew up in Atlanta as a product of the Atlanta public school system. I had connections in the community. And so I brought those kinds of resources to the bench.
Mm.
So I have a father who needed a job. I needed the man to work so I can get this kid in school. I can get him in stable housing so I can get him to school every day. I could pick up the phone and call the president of the Urban League because I knew him personally. Or I could call my pastor and say, I need to try to help stabilize his family. I need to housing or the housing director of the Atlanta Housing Authority, who I'd known for many years. So those kinds of things helped me to corral and bring resources to the bench
Mhm.
that I was very unconventional and I made no apologies for it.
Yeah. We're talking today with Judge Glenda Hatchett, who I'm sure that you're familiar with. She has been on television really, seems like most of my life, half of my life anyway.
25
Uh,
years, yeah, a long time.
so we're here talking with her about a variety of topics today. We're honored to have her presence with us this morning here on the front page. Judge Hatchett, we're talking now about this kind of feminine energy that you brought to the bench and to our airwaves, really, in a discipline that we are not really accustomed to seeing that energy be brought to. And it causes me to start to ask some larger questions
Sure.
about the world at large and about where we are societally. A lot of us have, some grave concerns about the state of our world. I saw an op-ed this morning on Instagram from the New York Times regarding our preparedness to do battle with China. And the whole bent of this commentary was that, well, our military, we tout it as being the greatest military that has ever existed in the history of the universe and the history of mankind. But behind closed doors, people are very concerned that maybe we're not at a point where we're ready to wage war with China. And the whole thing, I just had to eventually turn it off. It was a video commentary, and I had to turn it off because I'm thinking, this just never ends. This escalation where it's, your military might is just not enough to challenge someone else's, and we just continue this armament, and it gets to be more and more blown more and more out of proportion to the point that now we are fully capable of destroying ourselves as a human race.
We are
And it
right.
strikes me and it strikes a lot of people. India Arie is one of my favorite artists, and she has a song called Talk to Her where she
Yes.
discusses the need for this infusion of a
Yeah.
feminine energy into the world. Can you talk to me just as someone who has brought that essence to the work that
Yeah.
you do unashamedly, who has brought that feminine
Yeah.
essence to the work that you do? How needed is that in the world today, and how much of a difference would it make, considering the issues that we're dealing with now, which are just being escalated so much farther and farther? Every time we open up the internet and see new articles, and it never seems to end. How much do we need that infusion of a feminine energy in the world today?
We do. Radically, excuse me, it needs to be a radical infusion
Yeah.
of the feminine energy. All right, and I make no apologies for that and saying that. Um, I believe that there has to be more of a balance
Hmm.
because we're so out of whack, a balance of this infusion of that.
Hmm.
Because what happens with that is that we aren't looking first to fight.
Yeah.
We are looking first to fix. There's a
Hmm.
difference
Hmm.
between fighting and fixing it. And I would even tell young people in my courtroom all the time and parents and people who are involved in these families, I would say, unless we understand the issue, that if we really are taking the time to peel back the layers of this issue, that we can't fix it unless we understand it.
Hmm.
And the energy that the feminine energy, is looking for how we understand it so we can fix it as opposed to this, we're just going to fight. And it's very telling now, I think about this, it's very telling that the secretary that has been appointed has said, along with the president, that it should be the Department of War,
Hmm.
not the Department of Defense,
Hmm.
right? That it should be, which suggests to me a very aggressive posture of
Yes.
approaching this, as opposed to defending and perhaps trying to figure out how you de-escalate the situation. And so I think that that has to be something that we celebrate, this feminine energy that we bring to problem solving, to fixing, and trying to be more humane in our approach to the world. Because this has the potential of spiraling so out of control that we won't be able to pull it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And my concern is, I've had a lot of conversations over the years with, friends, with family members, male friends, male family members, and this is a societal problem at large. I don't think that as men and women that we ought to have the posture of being combative with each other. I think there needs to be more conversation that takes place where we learn from each other and where we understand that achieving that balance is the ideal because the masculine is needed as well as the feminine. But
Course.
I do feel, I'll say this from a personal point of view, I do feel that oftentimes, and this is an outflow of the way that our society trains its men and its women, really. But we train men in our society to be afraid of the feminine. We train them to be insecure around that, to be threatened by that. There's nothing worse than a man being called effeminate. There's nothing worse than a man being called gay. There's nothing worse than a man being compared to a woman or being treated like a woman. It's seen as something that in our society that is fundamentally it's a negative. It's something that is considered weak oftentimes. How do we
And
begin to
don't you dare
talk to?
cry. And you shouldn't cry. We tell little boys, no, you shouldn't
Yeah, don't
cry.
cry. Boys
Don't
do
cry.
not cry.
Don't
Yeah.
show don't show emotion,
Yeah. Oh, you're
which
acting
is
like a girl. Yeah. Yeah.
very, very, very damaging
Yeah. How
to
do how
that
do we
because
start to train our boys to think differently along these lines? Because for a lot of these old cats, it may be a little bit too late to train a lot of their thinking. But how do we begin to shift this dynamic in our culture around how we train men and boys and young women, and in how we regard the feminine? How do we begin to change the dynamic there?
yeah. It has to be a conversation that we start early with parenting. Years ago, I did in a series of cities, I did parent power. And one of the things I talked about is that one of the things that we talked about, and that we really have to be careful that we're setting standards for our girls, but we aren't setting the same standards for our boys.
Hmm.
On the other side of this
Yeah.
conversation, there's a curfew for my daughter, but there wasn't a curfew for your son.
Yeah.
And so, what are we doing, or how are we raising? And conversely, the question becomes, are we raising boys to appreciate who they are, one, but also appreciating what these little girls, who they are as well, and to respect them, and for there to be this mutual respect. And so those conversations have to be had on those levels. And perhaps I need to start doing these parenting conferences again. And maybe with the technology now, I don't have to travel to various cities that I ought to be able to do them online. But the hard questions are, what are we saying to our children? How are we having these conversations? And what are our own headsets? Are we creating such that, we're saying to our boys, you gotta be tough, you gotta be tough, you gotta be tough. And we're saying to our girls this, that, and the other. And why can't we have a better sense of this raising? I have sons who are well into adults now. And what I try to do with them is make sure that they had an appreciation and respect and understood the whole notion of feminism and what that meant in terms of what their roles were in relating to girls and young women as they were growing up. That was very important to me, that we had that dialogue and that they had that respect for women. It's just very, very important. But also we have to have that kind of conversations with our daughters, that they are worthy, that they should not compromise, that they should have these standards in their lives. But those conversations have to be had early on
Yeah.
and continuously. And to that, it's interesting you say that because I actually have a children's book that's coming out in April. for little girls.
Oh, wow.
And it
Okay.
talks about dreaming bold dreams. And at some point, I'd love to talk to you more about that. But I did that in order to have little girls. And the premise is that if you're a little girl and someone tells you can't, you can because you are. And it
Hmm.
goes on to talk about those standards that we have.
Hmm.
But to answer your question very succinctly, and I'm sorry I was much too long on this, but to
Okay.
answer it succinctly, it really has to be the conversations that we're having as parents, as mentors, as aunts and uncles, as godparents with our children.
Hmm.
We can't wait until they're 25 and say,
Right.
no, wait a minute, you got this messed up attitude that you're coming into.
Yeah.
It's got to start early.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking today with Judge Glenda Hatchett, who you know from your television screen. You have probably grown up watching her. She has been a constant presence for a lot of years, and she has a show that is airing right now called The Verdict. Judge Hatchett, where can folks find out more about what you're up to right now? Because our fractured
Yeah.
media landscape, we're just kind of like, wait, Judge Hatchett is still out there. Where can they find out more about what you're
Right.
up to?
Right. Well, follow me on social media, the Judge Hatchett. I'm getting better at posting what I'm doing in my life. And of course, the website, judgehatchett.com. But you know, the thing is that, Dara, people don't realize that I am a lawyer and that I practice law.
Mm,
For instance, there have been so many young Black men who've been murdered by police. But years ago, I mean, listen, 9 years ago, it seems time has gone so fast. Philando Castile was murdered by police in Minnesota.
hmm.
That was the case. Again, there have been so many. So I remind you, this is the case where the girlfriend live streamed
Hmm.
him being killed by the police. People don't realize I represented that family in the wrongful death case.
Wow.
Bobby Christina in a civil suit. I joined David Ware and we got a 36 plus $1 million verdict in a wrongful death case because we proved that she didn't overdose and drown in that tub. Bobby Christina, as you all will remember, was Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown's daughter. And so I do practice law. And so you can get all of that information, but follow me on social media because I
Okay.
do
What
keep
your
up.
handle is the Judge Hatchet.
Is that right, Kim? Okay, I need to
That's
turn
right.
around.
The Judge Hatchet on all
The
social
Judge
media
Hatchett.
platforms.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Follow Judge Hatchet. Now you're celebrating at this point 25 years on television. It's hard to believe. So
It is
what's
hard to believe. I'm like, what? 5 years? How could that be? Right?
what have you set out to accomplish? What's been the driving force behind what you have wanted to present, what you have wanted to bring to us as we tune into you on our television screens? What has been the takeaway that you hope that people receive
Yeah.
when they tune into your shows?
Well, first of all, I said from the very beginning, Dar, that my father's name, my ancestor's name is on that show, right?
Mm.
And so I never wanted my children or anyone to look at that show and be like, ah. So I didn't do foolishness. I just didn't. I won't. I didn't. Will never do it. And what I wanted to do was use that powerful medium to be able to hopefully educate people. So I've had people stop me. I've had people write me. Quick story, I was in the Bronx years ago on a book signing for my very first book, and a woman raised her hand in the Q&A and she said, I just want you to know I'm graduating with my nursing degree in May. And so I'm like, oh, how wonderful, right? She said, no, Judge, you don't understand how wonderful it is. I was a drug addict.
Mm.
I lost custody of all three of my children to the system because I was addicted to drugs. But I was watching you one day and you were talking to a woman who was an addict.
Mm.
And I believe that you were talking to me. And
Wow.
so what I have tried to use this platform to be one of lessons, but healing and encouraging people. And she said that she literally got up her sofa that day and checked herself into rehab, and that she'd gotten the custody of her children back. And I could tell you a lot of stories like that. And so I'm not going to get on there and be acting a fool. I'm just not going to do it.
Hmm.
I'm not. And it is important to me that there be a standard of excellence, but that always the end goal is that it's helping.
Hmm.
Everybody who comes to my show uh, that doesn't leave in better shape, but that's the goal. Even if you lose the case technically, I'm hoping that you leave with something that might be of help to you. And that's how I try to use this medium for good.
Hmm.
And it's interesting to see now generations of people who grew up watching it who now are saying, if I had $1 for everybody who came up to me at the National Convention of Black Lawyers, National Bar Association this summer, the 100th anniversary, I've had $1 for every young person who came up to me and said, Judge, I grew up watching you and you inspired me to go to law school. And
Wow.
so it's just been, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for having this platform, and I think that God has given me this opportunity, and I've tried to be a good steward of it.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of judge shows, like I said, at that time. It was just a popular time for a lot of those shows to be springing up. With several black judges, remarkably, there was Justice
Yes.
Joe Brown, and there was Greg. I'm trying to remember his last name. What was the other? Mathis.
Greg
Yes,
Mathis,
Judge Greg Mathis.
Maybelline.
Maybelline, that's right. That's right. Judge Lynn Toller was also another judge that
Mhm.
was out there at the time. So, yeah, now there's a lot to be said about this idea of tough love. When I think of Joe Brown and Greg Mathis, the style and the delivery and the methodologies, they differed quite a bit from what it was that you were doing. What do you make of this whole idea of, the toughness, the tough love? Do you consider yourself as someone who delivers tough love? Is that something that you find useful in your courtroom or in life as a mom, your mother? Was
Yeah.
that a philosophy that you carried, and how effective do you feel that has been, if it is?
Well, I think it depends on the situation. And there are cases where, I mean, in this case, we had to stop because I was about to come down on the bench and physically, like, girls, I said, if you were my child, you wouldn't be doing this. And she said, well, you ain't my mama. Well,
Mm.
I'm okay, right? What the heck? Um, so there have been times where I have really been really, really hard on people. Um, but I think each of us brings a different style based on who we are and what we did coming before we even were at the bench. And so there have been some tough, tough times, tough cases, tough love that's been necessary. And I think that that is an important piece of it. But I think it's a reading. There's not a cookie cutter approach to everything. I come in with a fresh eye on every case. When I was on the bench in Atlanta, I had to discipline myself that when I put the key in the door in my home, I had to leave it on the outside so I could pick it up again the next day and
Mhm.
that I would have the emotional energy to deal with my own children at
Mhm.
home. And I had to learn that early on. And if I made when I made a decision, I didn't linger about it.
Mhm.
And that's a very important discipline in this work. That once I decided, I didn't go back and second and third guess myself. I made the decision because then I had to focus on the next case, and I
Mhm.
had to give the next case the best that I had.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's got to be, I mean, that's, in the world of
Tough.
psychology, and I marvel at mental health professionals, in particular doctors, who also have to make that separation and leave the work at work. Otherwise, it could potentially consume your life. So have you never dealt with dread or regret or feelings of, how have I do a job that affects people's real life, and I have to get it right. Do you ever question your ability to get it right, or whether or not a decision that you have made is the wrong decision?
If I hadn't gotten to that place early on in my career, I would not have lasted a month in this work.
Hmm.
I had to get to the place where I just had to believe that I was doing the best I could, that I was making the best decision I could, because it does have such rippling effects on people's lives. I had a case. I was brand new on the bench, and a child had died.
Hmm.
A child had died at the hands of their parent, of the stepfather had beaten this child to death.
Oh,
The autopsy report from the doctor, it was so horrendous that a woman who had been in the system for probably 30 plus years literally ran out the court vomiting. I mean, that's how horrible this case was.
hmm.
So I took a recess and I went into the bathroom. I'll never forget this. The old, porcelain sink. I don't think it was really porcelain, some kind of white sink and a cold tile floor in the bathroom in my chambers. And I can literally close my eyes now and be back there and feel just that cold, hard floor on my knees. And I said, God, and this is the prayer I prayed. I said, God, please give me the strength and the wisdom to not be consumed by the grief of this dead child.
Hmm.
But there were three of the child's siblings that were before me.
Hmm.
And God, please give me what I need to be able to deal with this day in and day out. And when I got up off my knees that day, I believe that I had a new anchor in my back that strengthened me in a way. I'm telling you, if I hadn't prayed that prayer that day, if I hadn't gone through that experience, I would not have lasted in this job a month because it was so heavy and so hard every day that I had to, and I had to be able to go because you could just stop. You could get paralyzed about this dead child.
Hmm.
But then there were three of the siblings there that I had to be responsible for and to do what I could to make sure they were protected. And so that was a defining moment for me. And it happened a couple of weeks after I was on the bench initially. And so that's how I had to deal with it. I had to get to the discipline of being able to say, Glenda, you have made the best decision that you can make and not regret it and not play it over and not go back and second guess myself. And did that play out? I was reversed only once in the time that I was on the bench by a higher court. And then the state Supreme Court then reversed it in my favor. I
Hmm.
don't say that from a place of ego. I say because I worked hard to try to get it right the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking today with Judge Hatchett today about her long career, her 25-year television career. She has been a judge. You've been a judge for how long? Because you were a judge before you came to television.
Yeah, so I've been a judge for then 35 years. Goodness, 30, yeah. Yeah. So I went to the bench October 1st, 1990.
Wow. Wow.
For 35 years. Yeah.
So we're talking to Judge Hatchett today about her long and storied career. She is still able to be found on television on a show called The Verdict with Judge Hatchett. You can find her online at the Judge Hatchett. Find her on any of the social media sites. She says she's getting better about posting regularly, so find her and
Yes.
keep up with
Yes.
what she's doing
Yes.
online. I want to switch gears just a little bit, Judge Hatchett. I know that both we share something in common in that Black maternal health, infant and maternal health is a very important topic to you. I've done some content on that. I'm an online content creator myself, and I've done a lot of work around this over the
Thank
years.
you. Thank you for doing
Yeah,
that.
and thank you
Thank you.
for the work you've done. I mean, why is this topic so important to you? How did this become a topic that you became passionate about?
Right. I never referred to her as my daughter-in-law. Always referred to her as my daughter, although she was married to my son.
Mhm.
Kira Dixon Johnson, amazing woman. I mean, just smells like a Renaissance woman. I mean, she spoke five languages fluently. She had owned 12 schools in China before she married my son and came back to the US that taught English. She raced cars. She was, a runner. She did, I mean, skydiving at least twice a month. I mean, she was that woman, right? And so they already had a 19-month-old little boy, Charles V. And I was in LA because she was at Cedar-Sinai having a C-section. And that she hemorrhaged to death
Mm.
unnecessarily. She should not have died. I
Mm.
mean, horrible situation. I left the hospital taking the 19-month-old, my grandson, back to the condo and never expecting that she would not be okay. I mean, there was problems after that, but we'd been there all day and they said, oh, we'll go in and fix it. We may have nicked her bladder. It'll be all fine. So I left after about 8 hours being there and went back to the hospital and she died.
Mm.
And it just changed our world. A 19-month-old and a brand new baby and a grieving son. And I said to my son, you cannot stay here in LA. Move them back to Atlanta. And frankly, Dara, I did not understand the horrible discrepancy and the fact that Black and brown women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die and as a result of giving birth in this country. First of all, I don't want any women to die,
Mhm.
but the fact that there's such a discrepancy among women who look like us. And so that's when we really began to see a lot of conversation, and it helped that I had a national platform and that we could use to really amplify this and this important work. But what I want you to know, and but your listeners to know, is that 80%, at least 80% of these deaths are preventable.
Mm.
Now, there's some women who have pre-existing conditions that couldn't be avoided. 80% of these deaths are preventable. And so there's so much work to do. But the implications now with this new budget, they say beautiful bill, I say horrendous bill,
Mhm.
the implications for Medicaid on this situation of women having access. People think that Planned Parenthood is just abortion clinics. That's not true. It is a resource for a lot of women to get health care around prenatal issues in this country, those budgets being devastated. And so my concern now, frankly, is that we are going to see a rise in the number because women after Roe versus Wade was reversed don't have the access to be able to make decisions about their bodies. We're seeing women carrying toxic pregnancies to term because they can't get that relief. We have seen women die because they haven't been able to get those toxic pregnancies terminated. And so I'm very concerned. But the question is, what do we do about it? And that issue is that we have to keep advocating. So I couldn't do it at first because it was too hard, it was too emotional. But because I have the backing of this amazing law firm based in Atlanta, now we have an office in DC, is that I'm taking on maternal death cases nationally because I have to, we've got to have some accountability. And until we have more accountability, we're going to continue to see these tragedies happen. I don't want any family to go through what my grandchildren have gone through and not having a mother come home, or to watch my grieving son go through what he's gone through without his wife. And so we do that. And so I thank you for the work you've done. But
Mhm.
until we continue to raise the level of consciousness and accountability, things are going to not be where we need them to be in this country.
Yeah, we're talking today to Judge Hatchett. You know her from your television screens. We've grown up watching her and loving her and appreciating the compassion that she brings to the work that she does. Now, you're listening to Radio Free 102.3 FM, KJLH. I'm Dara Starr Tucker. I want to ask you, Judge Hatchett, as we're preparing to wind down this conversation. First of all, I hope your son and your grandchildren are doing well. I remember this story, and for some reason, I did not remember that you were attached to it, but I remember at the time realizing that this was your son and your daughter in law. So we're just sending love to them and hoping that they're doing okay in the
Thank you.
present day. Yeah.
They are. They're 9 and 11. They're incredible children. Charles has taken up the work in a foundation called For Cure for Moms. And now he's done a new thing for Cure for Fathers, so that they really are just really helping to educate the partners in these equations of how they can best advocate for mothers in these situations.
Mhm.
But she should have never died, and
Yeah.
she should be home with her precious children.
Yeah, I just did a fundraiser for my niece's school. My niece, who is she is severely disabled because of medical malpractice, and my sister ended up going
Ah,
through a situation that was grave, and she almost died. She ended up having
mm.
a C-section that was without any anesthesia. It was an emergency C-section. Yes, with no anesthesia. I ended up doing a fundraiser for their school that did, very well. But just this all is in the family of maternal mortality and of infant mortality. It's an issue that I'm very
Yes.
passionate about myself. So I appreciate the work that you're doing and that your son is doing as well in that area because more
Well,
work is needed.
I'm a, not to pat myself on the back, I'm a really good lawyer. And so I am taking these cases on nationally, and I do need for people to know that. So, if you just go to judgehatchett.com and people have these cases, I want to advocate for you
Mhm.
and for these situations because, as your situation, you're talking about your sister who almost died, but also this precious child now who has disabilities because of the medical malpractice
Yeah,
problems. And we've got to be very intentional about these cases. And so I'm grateful now to have the emotional piece to do it. I couldn't do it at first. It was
yeah,
just too hard because it
yeah.
was too raw.
Mhm.
But no, I'm advocating for these families now, and it's important that we do the work. So thank you for doing the fundraiser. Thank you for also doing the work that you're doing around the issue of maternal health.
Yeah.
Because think about when mothers are gone in these families,
Hmm.
just think about what happens
Hmm.
to those children, to the remaining partner. There's a woman in Atlanta now who's done around the mothers who have lost daughters in maternal
Mm.
health,
Mm.
death cases. That's just a remarkable to sit at a table with all these women, even though she was not my biological daughter. I sat at that table with Kira's mother
Mm.
in that space of a retreat of support and healing that has to happen because her daughter was a doctor at CDC,
Wow.
went home, had complications. They didn't follow up, and she died.
Wow.
So you have the grandmother who's raising her precious granddaughter.
Mm. Yeah, and there are so many stories like this, and people don't realize, and I didn't realize until I started doing this advocacy work around this. I've done what I call breakdowns. I have these little, maybe 3 to 5 minute, kind of mini documentary pieces that I do
Good.
online, and I didn't realize until I started investigating this just how bad this problem was, particularly in the Black community and Native American communities. Our complication rate, our mortality rates are sky high, like you said, 3 to 4 times what any other groups, what white women deal with in childbirth, pregnancy and childbirth. So, yeah, there's a lot more education that needs to happen. So, just yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing
Work
in
that
the
you're doing. And thank you for allowing me to talk about this today, because
absolutely,
again, the more we have these conversations, the more people are aware.
yeah,
We've gotten so many emails, calls that say, until I knew about your daughter, I didn't know that I should do this. And
Hmm.
I believe that it saved my wife's life, or,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
I'm,
sometimes it can just be basic awareness. And, I not to harp on it too much, but I just because this is a very personal issue to me, and it is a very personal issue to a lot of folks that are listening right now as well. I think we've just
yes,
kind of learned to take it in stride, and we've just learned that this is something that should be expected, and it should not be something as simple as, a doctor understanding what an issue like a complication like preeclampsia looks like in Black
yes,
women. Even
yes,
black doctors sometimes don't know how
yes,
to recognize this stuff. My sister was developing that kind of darkness in her neck, and her face was swelling a lot, and we knew this was her first baby. So we knew she didn't really look like herself. I'm like, she looks a little puffy to me, more so than I'm used to seeing pregnant women be, and that sort of darkening of the neck. And we didn't know what the signs were that she was developing toxemia. We didn't know. And so just to have that awareness of, hey, there's something that's not right. Your doctor may not be picking up on it. You need to insist that some tests be run. Serena Williams has a very famous story now of having to insist
Yes,
that certain tests be run. Beyonce, and there have been, Allison Felix, who was the track runner. So many well-known women now are coming out with these stories of like, hey, this is, it doesn't even matter the socioeconomic, strata that you exist in. Poor women, rich women, it really doesn't matter. It's affecting Black women of all socioeconomic statuses.
absolutely. Absolutely. That is absolutely so true. I have to really say, too, that Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, who is a dear friend, is the president of Morehouse School of Medicine.
Hmm.
She is a phenomenal Black woman. I mean, aside from being this amazing OBGYN by training, she is president of Morehouse School of Medicine. She's taken it to a whole nother level. And
Yeah.
we've had these conversations, and the year um, April died, Kira died that April, that school year at the beginning, Val dedicated the opening convocation conference to the issue of maternal death
Hmm.
at this Black medical school. And so the more that we are able to engage people, the more that we're able to connect these dots, the more women we can send home to be mothers to their children.
Yeah.
And that's really, we just got to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Judge Hatchett is where I keep saying we're going to wrap up. As we're wrapping up this conversation, looking forward, what would you want the legacy not only of your television show to be, but over and your career to be, which goes beyond just your television presence, but your life to be? What would you want your legacy to be in this world?
And I have really thought about this and prayed a lot about it. I believe that I am called to empower and encourage people.
Mhm.
An old woman had to teach me early on, and when I came into the work on the bench, she said, "Your role is not to fix people, your role is to empower people to fix themselves."
Hmm.
And so I think that everything that I'm doing fits into that overall arch, just the work I do on television, the work with the children's book, the work with my previous books, the new projects that I have in the hopper that I hope to be able to talk to you about before too long, are all designed for me to empower, to inspire people to then move their lives to higher ground.
Mhm.
Because it's not just this work that I'm doing, Dara. It's not just this work now as I'm trying to pour into people, but I see my work as prenatal care. What do I mean by that? That if I can get my hands on a 15-year-old, I can get my hands on a 45 for your person and inspire them to do it differently, then we're making a head start on their children's
Mhm.
children for generations in ways that will live beyond my lifetime. I
Mhm.
want my work to live beyond me.
Yeah.
That's what I see as my purpose on this earth.
Absolutely. Well, Judge Hatchett, we want to thank you so much for spending time with us here on the front page. You can find Judge Hatchett online. She's sharing more and more now at the Judge Hatchett on Instagram, on Facebook. You can find her all over. You have a couple of books that are out right now, Judge Hatchett. Can you tell us what those are before we
Yeah,
wrap?
the one is a parenting book. The first one is a parenting book, say what you mean and mean what you say. And then the second one is just kind of an inspirational book that is called Dare to Take Charge, which is for everybody. And then a children's book we are expecting to be out in April.
Yeah.
And so that's those are but the two books have been out for a while.
Okay.
Parenting book, say what you mean and mean what you say. We got to be consistent in the way we parent and raise up a new generation of young people.
Okay.
And then
Wonderful.
dare to take charge is what are we doing in our own lives with the gifts that we have and really daring us. And I dare myself as I was writing this to take charge and to do and to try to do our lives in a way that we are elevating not only ourselves, but people around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Judge Hatchett, for joining us today
Thank you.
on the front
I loved it.
page. We've enjoyed talking with you. Looking forward to plugging in more with what you're up to these days. Thank you for taking time to share with us here on the front page this morning.
Hopefully, I'll be in studio next time I'm in the area. I can come in and actually see you. So
Oh,
I
that
would
would be
love to do that.
wonderful. We would absolutely love to have you in studio. Please do join us. Thank you so much.